Hey everybody, AI-generated Joelle here. This episode has a trigger warning for mentions of suicide, death, and the Holocaust. Follow the timestamps on screen to avoid. For our audio listeners, a bell will sound to warn you to skip at least a minute ahead. Otherwise, enjoy this episode. Please mind the gap. Hi everybody, welcome to Please Mind the Gap podcast, a podcast between a dad and daughter who talk about pretty much anything and everything. Today's episode is about, is it generic history or like a specific
No.
instance in
Today
history?
is a little slice, or an interesting slice of history. Speaking of slice, how's the hand?
Oh man, so you may have seen in some of the previous episodes, I had like a little bandage around my hand. I look like a little crippled child from the 1800s going, please sir, please, tuppence for the child. But nah, my hands looking better. No more bandage.
How many stitches was it?
Oh yeah, so it was seven stitches. So I guess I gotta do a brief overview of what happened.
Or not. Make it interesting.
Non-brief?
Monkey knife fight?
I was hacking my way through the Amazon jungle with one of the machetes that we used in one of our previous episodes, and then accidentally hacked my hand.
Or she was slicing bread. Whichever one of those is more believable.
Right. So moral of the story, don't slice stale bread, and don't slice stale bread when you're tired, or else you have to go get stitches. But today's story is not about stitches. Wait, is it?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
It's about bird poop, solving world hunger, and weapons of mass destruction. All in one interesting slice of history.
Okay.
All right, here we go. You ready?
Alrighty, history lessons with Dad. Let's go.
Prologue. So not early on. Plants derive their nutrients from the soil, right? Which is a natural thing, and after a while, though, particularly when it comes to agriculture, if you start planting the same types of plants over and over again in the same soil, they start leaching the same types of nutrients out of the soil, and eventually the soil becomes less fertile.
Right. You can like strip it of its stuff.
One of the main ones that happens to one of the main nutrients is nitrogen. And so throughout history, farmers have realized this and have learned, and they might not have understood that it was nitrogen per se, but they realized, if I keep planting sweet potatoes over and over and over again, then they're not going to keep on growing. So they do a couple of different things. Crop rotation is one. In this little plot of land, you plant one crop one year, and then the next year you plant a different kind of crop, and you rotate things around. You can also use natural type of fertilizers like manure or like compost or different things to try to replenish the soil and stuff. Which interestingly, or you can let the ground go fallow after a couple of years. Like you grow stuff in it for a couple of years and then you leave it alone.
Oh, so then Mother Nature does it.
Right, and then you come back. Which interestingly enough, it was when I was working on this particular slice of history thing that I remembered. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I seem to recall something about that of plant your fields for 6 years, and then in the 7th year, don't plant or harvest, leave it alone.
Deliver us to the promised land.
Okay. Yes, but right. So it's in Exodus. It's part of the Mosaic Law for the Israelites, but it actually works really well if you understand the nitrogen cycle of soil.
I didn't know that had that English. I didn't know that was intentional. I thought the story was just 6 years and then 7 and then famine. I didn't know that.
No, it wasn't famine. No. God said specifically, hey guys, here's what I want you to do. When you get to the promised land, plant your crops for 6 years. And then on the 7th year, don't
I'm
plant
confusing
anything.
this with the story of Joseph and how there
Oh,
was
the
the
7
dream.
years of...
My bad. That's the wrong DreamWorks movie. It's
Okay.
not Prince of Egypt. I should have been quoting Joseph. What was it? King of Dreams or something? The second DreamWorks movie. I was thinking of that.
Moses?
No. So there's
Joseph again?
Huh?
Okay, we're off topic.
No. I thought you were talking about the Joseph story and how there
Right.
was some kind of a dream that had to do with like for 6 years do this and then on the 7th there's a something.
No, there were 7 years of good
And then 7
crops
years of
and
bad.
7 years of bad, yeah.
Numbers, confusing, DreamWorks. Continue.
Or the Bible, either way. Could be movies or the...
I'm thinking DreamWorks. My bad.
Please mind the gap. Okay, so when it came to civilization and societies, right? As more and more people started moving into more densely populated areas like villages, towns, cities, and things like that, the farmers that were left had to be able to produce more because there were more people who weren't farmers, and so the people who were farming had to produce for more people. So a little bit more intensity, but still not really a big deal until you start hitting around the time of the Industrial Revolution, when not only was there significant population increase globally, but also in the, particularly in Western Europe and Americas and stuff like that, as more and more people were shifting into cities and into manufacturing and things involved with the Industrial Revolution, the farmers, more and more pressure was put on them to be able to produce lots of crops and to specialize in crops. And they were running into this issue that farmers have known for thousands of years. I keep planting tobacco over and over and over again, and now it's
Eventually
not really doing too
out.
well. Or I
Yeah.
keep planting corn, and so they were scrambling around, trying to figure out what can we use for fertilizer. Well, along the Pacific coast of South America, the Andean region, along the Andes mountains and stuff, Peru, Chile, Bolivia, things like that. The farmers there for thousands of years had been using partially petrified bird droppings. So there are rocky islands right off the coast of South America there that are mostly just rocks. Like they don't have plants and fields with flowers and stuff like that. It's just rocks.
Underwater mountains.
Right. It's just rocks sitting
chilling.
out there. And so the birds are like, you know what? Nobody's going to mess with us out here. This is where we're going to go nest. So by the millions, seabirds would go out there and nest, and they'd leave bird droppings out there.
Right. And
more bird droppings and more and the sun would bake them onto the rocks until you actually had tons, literally tons and tons of bird droppings out there.
I don't know if petrified
But you could,
is the right
well,
word,
it was almost solidified
like
to like rock-ish
baked?
type of thing. You had to actually like chip them away with an axe or pick or something like that.
Well, maybe.
In chunks. Anyway, so the farmers there realized, this makes fantastic fertilizer. Well, Europeans coming through there in the late 1500s first got a glimpse of that and were like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Okay, whatever. And as early as 1700, there actually was a ship that brought a shipment of it back to Spain. And people were like, oh, okay, cool. But it wasn't until 1813 where I think it was a Danish scientist published a work called something like the Elements of Agricultural Chemistry. And it became a bestseller because that's, Elements of Agricultural Chemistry. Woo! Everybody was reading it. It was translated in a bunch of European languages.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main things about it, it said, hey, one of the best fertilizers that you can possibly get your hands on is Peruvian guano, which is the word that the Andes
I have
folks,
heard that word before.
Guano. Peruvian guano.
I don't know where.
So folks were like, ooh, Peruvian guano, okay. So ships that were trading in the Pacific there and stuff, whalers and things like that, they had been taking goods over there and then kind of been coming back half empty, and they were like, oh, you know what? We could still make money. Let's mine guano over there and bring it back to Europe.
Oh, I think I know where this might go.
Interesting. Where do you think this is going?
This sounds like the typical colonizers see something that worked for native people, and then they come and then they deplete that critical thing that the native people think to survive, and then the native people are like, I kind of need to eat, and then the colonizers were like, that sounds like a you problem, and then there's no more guano, but like for a while, like all of the guano was taken away. That's where a lot of these stories end up.
That's true.
Is, you know, like the depletion of natural resources by the colonizer.
So, sort of.
We'll see though.
Sort of, European countries and the U.S. all jumped on the bandwagon saying, ooh, white gold, guano, we gotta get some. And Peruvian guano or the islands off the coast of Peru were some of the best sources of guano.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't the only ones in the world, but they were some of the best sources.
Mm-hmm.
And so ships were going there and were mining. So the Peruvian government was like, okay, all right, we are making very clear that we lay claim to these islands. Yes, absolutely, you guys can mine them for guano, but we do need to get a percentage of the revenue and blah, blah, blah. That led to the guano age of Peruvian history. From about 1803 to like 1889 was the majority of the revenue of the country of Peru came from guano. Here's where things got interesting. 1856, U.S. Congress passes a law called the Guano Act that says any American citizen who finds an island with guano resources anywhere in the world, if it isn't necessarily claimed by anybody else, you can claim it for the United States and we'll back you up. It will become a part of the United States. And
legalized manifest destiny?
Pretty much. So the U.S. annexed over the next few years 94 islands in the Pacific and in the Caribbean. Uninhabited islands, most of them, just rocky stuff, but whatever. And including, here's an interesting one. It's kind of a side story. Including one right off the western tip of Haiti called Navassa Island. And Navassa Island, to this day, is still disputed territory between the United States and Haiti. And the U.S. still says, no, we actually claim that per the Guano Act of 1856. It's uninhabited.
Do we still need guano?
No.
My guess is no.
No.
So why?
So
we know why.
So the United States actually, it now falls under the Department of Fish and Wildlife or something like that, services.
What does that even mean?
Anyway.
Huh?
Oh, there was actually an interesting.
Like if there's a crime committed on that island, where do you go to prison?
Exactly.
Do you go to
wait.
Prison?
This wasn't part of the story, but I'll tell you.
Is it like international? Is it Interpol?
So
what do you do?
The working conditions for guano miners,
I'm sure, was horrible.
Horrible.
As per usual.
Horrible.
As per usual in these stories.
And so on Navassa Island in 1889-ish, there were some black workers, miners, guano miners, who were being very harshly mistreated by their.
From where?
Why they're they
or
were
unknown?
No. They were from the Caribbean. They might have even have been from Haiti. But anyway,
non-American. By
their white foreman and actually mutinied against, and there was kind of a revolt and stuff, and there was some fighting, and at least one of the foremen were killed. So they were eventually they were arrested, and they were taken to the U.S. to stand trial. But that was the question: is well,
if it's not an official part of the U.S., then you can't
part of the
really.
U.S. And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court.
And the decision?
The Supreme Court said, "Yeah, it's part of the U.S."
Oh, so they got tried. Yeah. Oh, well.
Okay, so the United States almost went to war with Peru over some of the islands off the coast of Peru that they were trying to. They actually sent Navy warships down there. The Peruvians were getting all. They were like, "Come on, let's do this." They were sending out stuff all over the place about protect, Peruvian sovereignty from the all the. It was on. It was about to go to war, and then finally the U.S. kind of backed off and was like, "Okay, let's not do this." But shortly thereafter, Chile invaded Bolivia and Peru and fought a war for several years over access to guano and to saltpeter.
Saltpeter?
Saltpeter, yes. Which is why, to this day, Bolivia is landlocked. It doesn't have a coast. It's entirely,
what is
like,
saltpeter?
if you look at Chile,
it's the skinny.
yeah, right, it goes off.
Yeah.
So Chile ended up taking over all of Bolivia's coastline as a result of that war.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, all of this was going on, but guano was a limited resource, even though they were mining tons of it. So in 1870, from Peru alone, Peru exported over 700,000 tons of guano in 1870.
That's a lot of birds.
That's what I'm telling you. You said it wasn't pet, but see, centuries and centuries of the stuff built up. That's what I'm telling you. It's like you had to mine it. Yeah, it's not like scoop it with a shovel and hey.
I see what you mean. That's all.
Right.
How
okay.
How much of the mountain top were you chipping away? Like, are they still there now?
There are still guano
it sounds like
places and stuff.
If this is classic late 1800s natural resource thing, people usually back then just depleted stuff.
Pretty much.
Just use it
right?
Use it all.
I mean, it was very effective as fertilizer, and it kind of staved off this sort of looming crisis of food production, of global food production.
Right.
Prior to that, it was estimated that global food production would be able to probably support a global population of about 2.5 billion people, max. But guano came along, and they were like, "Oh, okay, cool. We can produce more food and stuff, and so population growth continues, and we're okay for now. But guano's about to run out, so not really sure what's going to happen." Enter a German scientist named Fritz Haber. Fritz Haber was a German chemist who, let me back. Remember, the issue was the depletion of nitrogen. And it's not like there's not a lot of nitrogen on planet Earth.
Yeah, most of our atmosphere is nitrogen.
78% of air is nitrogen. So but how do you get nitrogen from air back into the ground?
Like quicker than nature does it naturally.
Right. Yeah. So Fritz Haber created a method called the Haber-Bosch process that was able to combine nitrogen from the air with hydrogen to produce ammonia.
AMMONIA?
Yes.
Isn't that bad for humans? Like you're not supposed to breathe that in?
Well, you're not sipping it out of teacups and stuff.
Yeah, but there's like ammonia cleaner, and it says like don't breathe this or ingest this.
But anyway, that happened to fix nitrogen out of gas, and then you were able to create very effective fertilizers that way. And so they actually were able to create on a commercial scale, on a large scale, synthesized fertilizers that replaced guano.
Is this the beginning of the brand Miracle Grow?
No, I don't know. Probably not. But anyway, so
Miracle Grow.
Fritz Haber actually won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry for his development of the Haber-Bosch process. Bosch, by the way, was the dude that was able to ramp it up on industrial scale. Like, Haber was the dude who figured out, here's how we do it, and then Bosch was like, okay, well,
let's mass market it.
How do we mass
produce it? Yeah.
To this day, right now, it is estimated that over a third of all global food production depends on fertilizers using the Haber-Bosch process, producing food for over half the world's population. So this one dude,
thank you, Mr. Haber and Mr. Bosch,
created a process that enabled human population to increase dramatically above the threshold that it was 100 years ago.
I'm laughing because I'm picturing Thanos going,
yes, there you go.
being like, no.
So, Mr. Haber, hero that you've never heard of, right?
Yes.
Fritz Haber, what an interesting dude. He was a very, very committed, staunch German nationalist. Who happened to be Jewish. Ethnically Jewish.
So not just religious,
no.
ethnically
Jewish.
But
now,
his passport was German.
Right. And he considered himself, first of all, a German citizen who happened to also be of Jewish descent. As an adult, because there was some amount of prejudice against Jews and stuff, Haber converted to Lutheranism.
Oh, so I no offense to the Lutherans, I call that Diet Judaism. No, sorry, Diet Catholicism.
Okay.
So that has that's nowhere close to Judaism.
It's Protestant Christianity, right? But of a German variety. Martin Luther was German, so Lutheranism, right? Specifically because he thought that it would open up doors for him professionally. And erase any kind of
so it was
stereotypes
more of
and stuff.
like a chess move. It was like a
career
move.
It was a career move.
Gotcha.
So then World War I breaks out. Again, committed German nationalist, right? He had, as a young man, he had served. There was mandatory military service for like 2 or 3 years, But now that the war broke out, he rejoined, and he was promoted to captain. No. He was placed in charge of the German Army's chemistry division. Now, interestingly enough, nitrogen-based things like fertilizer are remarkably similar to nitrogen-based high explosives stuff too. So his process enabled the German army to arm itself with lots of explosives. But then also they started playing around with, what if we were to create chemical weapons?
I wonder if the reason why this dude's name sounds slightly familiar, you haven't seen the movie Oppenheimer yet?
No.
I don't know if this dude's name was mentioned in Oppenheimer, but
probably.
Because I think Oppenheimer did do some studying in Germany with a bunch of German. So maybe he was a part of that movie or whatever. But continue.
So anyway, Haber led the team of scientists in the German Army's chemistry division, and they developed chlorine gas, which is heavier than air. So if you release it, it settles to the ground, and if there are trenches, it gets down into the trenches. So they're like, cool, I think this is going to work. Let's go test it out in the field. Which you would think testing it in the field is like, okay, we'll release a little bit here and a little bit there and see what happens or whatever. They decided for their field test, let's go release, I don't know, 400 tons of chlorine gas in a couple of situations over the course of a few days against Algerian troops and Moroccan troops and French troops and Canadian troops and British troops and stuff. And, I don't know, out of that particular battle, now not all the casualties were from the chlorine gas necessarily, but the overall statistics from that battle of people that died was somewhere on the order of about 60,000. The father of modern agriculture, the guy who, I don't know if you want to say saved the world from mass starvation or something like that, but basically
caused a significant increase in the population,
right,
and then a couple years
right,
later
was also the father of chemical warfare
like
and weapons of mass destruction.
Decrease in the population, yeah.
What in the world?
No single man should have that much power.
But there's more.
I have a prediction.
All right.
But I think, yeah, go ahead.
Let's talk about Fritz Haber's first wife.
Okay.
Fritz Haber met a young lady named Clara
Immerwahr,
who also happened to be Jewish. Ethnically.
Okay.
And was a very intelligent young woman, and happened to be the first woman who was awarded a doctorate from the University of Breslau in Germany, a doctorate in chemistry, and became a bit of a celebrity because of that. And actually, when she was defending her doctoral thesis and everything, whatever, that whole thing, it was open to the public. I think it was either that or when she was actually awarded her, hey, congratulations, you made it or whatever. But it was open to the public, and a lot of people came and witnessed that. It was a really big deal because they were like, whoa,
let's go women in STEM. Let's
the first woman. And she was a very outspoken pacifist and women's rights activist and stuff. So Fritz was impressed, and he was like, hey, you know what?
Would you say that we both have good chemistry?
That wasn't even a dad joke. Is there such a thing as daughter jokes?
It's just a bad joke.
Okay. Anyway.
That's what it is.
So at first she was like, no, I'm good, thanks.
That's hilarious.
Right?
But also, I love that for her.
She actually converted from Judaism to Christianity also as an adult. Her life is a little bit more mysterious. There are sort of secondhand accounts, or there are accounts of people who knew her and stuff, but not a lot of stuff that she did.
Not a lot of primary sources?
Right.
Okay.
So it appears that her conversion might have been more a genuine, hey, this is what I'm deciding to do for my own personal reasons. But several years later, she finally was like, okay, fine, Fritz, whatever. So they got married. After they got married, though, she ended up not really, like, she gave a couple of lectures and she published a little bit of something like the first year or so, but then pretty much just became a housewife after that. And her, whatever professional career she might have had, didn't happen. So the weekend that Mr. Haber, Captain Haber, had tested his chlorine gas against all the other folks,
and thousands of people just for lulz,
and came home, he was like, hey, cool, the test was successful, we good. There is no recorded evidence of what transpired between him and Clara that weekend when he came home. except for the fact that that night she took his service revolver, walked out into the garden, and shot herself in the heart.
There's a monologue waiting to be written about that. There's a one-woman show.
She didn't die immediately, but their 12-year-old son heard the shot, went outside, was like, Mom? What? And his mother died in his arms in the garden.
And therapy. Yikes.
A few days later, Fritz went back to work.
Well, that's because people didn't believe in grief back then. They didn't believe in
So
therapy
the son's
or
name
trauma
was
or anything.
Herman.
Yeah.
Herman went off to live in France. And it's not entirely, I'm sure I could dig into this and find out. It's not entirely clear, like, who did he go live with? I mean, he was 12 years old. His dad was like, okay,
Bye.
I'm back off to do some more death and destruction stuff.
Pew, pew.
And by the way, France was the enemy in World War. I mean, Germany was fighting against France, but somehow or another, Herman went to France. So that's kind of
For
odd.
school
But anyway,
or something? I don't know.
Anyway, so he went and lived in France pretty much thereafter. So World War I ends. Germany lost.
Mm-hmm.
Germany was as part of the armistice and all that. Germany was supposed to significantly limit their rearmament.
Their weapons productions and
Yes.
whatnot? Yeah. Right.
But they secretly continued to
Right.
develop chemical weapons,
Right.
and Fritz Haber was part of that process.
Mm-hmm.
Fritz Haber also, though, did some other civilian work on the side, too. In the institute that he was in charge of, those guys developed a cyanide-based insecticide called Zyklon A that was used extensively.
It just sounds familiar, and I'm trying to think why.
So, a few years later, slight tweaks were made, and it was called
Agent
Zyklon
Orange?
B,
Oh,
which was used
gas chambers?
in gas chambers.
Yeah. Do we know if he knew? Or it's very much implied that he knew what they were being used for?
So, hold on. He actually died before World War II fully kicked off.
Oh!
But
Oh.
he was still in charge and in kind of a high level in the German scientific community
Yeah, he had to know.
during the rise of the Nazi Party
Right, and
stuff
the nationalism,
in nationalism
and the,
in the early 1930s.
ethnocentrism and all of that.
And he was very much alarmed by it,
Xenophobia,
and he
yeah.
was surprised that people still considered his ethnic Jewishness ahead of his conversion to Christianity and his devotion to the German cause and his service in the German army. He was
People
like,
still saw
but
him
wait,
as a Jew?
yeah.
I wonder, did he look very stereotypically Jewish for the time so people could clock him? Is that why? Or that was just like a known fact about
It's probably
him?
just a known fact.
And they're like,
But he was like,
Ew.
so wait, what? What?
that is wild, but I'm not surprised.
So, he ended up dying, I think, of a heart attack in like 1935 or so. So before World War II fully kicked into gear and all the Holocaust and everything. But anyway, so Fritz
Which
Haber,
did happen.
think about all the stuff, the impact that he had on history, both positively and negatively, in a really fairly short period of time. And he, like I mentioned, he did win the Nobel Prize
Yeah.
for chemistry for what he produced. And then afterward, there were some people who were like, oh, wait, should we take that away?
Can you do that? Is that even a thing that has happened or can be done? I find English. I would not, because you aren't giving someone a Nobel Peace Prize for who they will be in the future.
It wasn't a peace prize. It was a chemistry prize.
You're not giving someone a Nobel Prize for who they will be in the future. It's they have done a specific thing that you are rewarding, right?
Yes. Here's the
so
crazy,
it's like
crazy
you wrote
thing,
a great book. Let me give you this literary prize for that great book. If you go on to write something crazy later, I'm just not going to give you the reward.
So if like you are, let's say hypothetically, you're at an awards show and then you walk up on stage and smack somebody, but then 10 minutes later they're like, hey, congratulations, you won an Oscar. Should they give you the Oscar?
The Oscars.
And then ban you from the Oscars for the next 10 years? Or should they?
So.
Hypothetically speaking.
Do you want me to not comment on that?
No, if you want to comment on that, you can. I don't really have the
incident.
Yeah, the incident. I don't really have
I think the banning from the Oscars for 10 years is wild, because I'm like, do you know what some of these other actors have done? You're acting like this dude is like he has done the most heinous act, and it's like some of these people in here have done some. We've got predators in this room who are active predators, and they're not banned. And it's not like you have to dig and find information. It is well known about some of these people. But no. This dude gets banned for, quote, 10 years is wild. A year or two, I'd be like, yeah, he needs to cool off. 10 years? Did they take the Oscar away from him?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, good, because he should be rewarded for that one good work that he did.
Can you imagine, though, if you were like on the Oscar committee or something like that, or you knew who
the Academy?
You were part of the Academy.
Yeah.
Academy, are they the Illuminati? Whoa.
I don't know. Maybe. There's a great Teen Titans Go episode about. I think actually the Academy in the Teen Titans Go episode is the Illuminati. I think that is the end goal or whatever.
So, can you imagine, though, if you knew that he was the one whose name was in the envelope that was going to come out in like 15 minutes, and then you saw the incident and you're like,
we got to change this real quick?
What are we supposed to do?
Nothing.
Are we going to do, what are we
now,
going to still...
if the prize was for, upstanding citizen of exemplary character and kindness, then yeah, change the award. But the award had nothing to do with the ability to keep calm in a stressful situation. It was about a movie, right? So yeah, if he was given, if it was going to be some kind of a great character award, then maybe switch it out. 10 years, that's wild. Yeah. Random fact about Will Smith, and then I promise we'll get back on topic. Foreigners think that he looks like Will Smith. Now, I 100% disagree. I think that when you were younger, you barely looked like younger 90s Will Smith, but barely. But we'll go overseas, and it's primarily European people, right? When we were in the Middle East, it wasn't people in the Middle East didn't think you were Will Smith. They just knew that you were Moroccan and would come up and speak to you in Arabic. But when we were in Europe, I remember people would come up to him and they'd be like, "Hey, Will Smith," and I'm like, I think you look nothing like Will Smith at all. Again, slightly when you were younger, you look like a young Will Smith, slightly. I think.
And who do you think people say I look like now when not with this haircut, but in 2 weeks when my hair grows out and it's kind of just gray all around?
That one dude from Commissioned? Who very few of our audience will know. That one actor who played Maroni in The Batman, a movie you haven't seen. Where are you trying to go? What are you trying to get at?
People say this to me all the time on my flights.
Oh, that you look like Obama?
Yeah. Well,
you are a completely different color. Is Obama biracial?
Yes.
Okay, so you both happen to be biracial. And you can't even do an Obama impression. What? No. Can you?
We're getting off topic here. Do you want the epilogue? It's not any happier than the story itself.
Mr. Haubber.
No, just Haber. Haber.
So Mr. Haber died of a heart attack in 35-ish, and then his work was used to kill his own people.
Yeah, including members of his extended family.
Well, of course.
And
That's
including...
how these things go.
Yeah. However, right, his son...
Who went off to France.
Herman. Then World War II kicks off,
Herman
and
Haber?
Germany invades France.
Mm-hmm.
He's German.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, okay, I need to bounce.
Mm-hmm.
So he escapes on a ship going to the Caribbean with his family, his wife and kids. And then eventually they get visas and go to the U.S. And they're in the U.S. for most of World War II.
NYC?
I don't know where they were. Anyway, Herman's wife passes away shortly after the end of World War II. So Herman commits suicide in 1946.
Why are these parents leaving their kids by themselves?
Herman's oldest daughter was named Claire, and she studied to become
Claire Haber?
a chemist.
Claire Haber. Wait, is her name Claire Haber?
Probably.
Okay.
Anyway, she studied to become a chemist, and she was working on research and trying to develop an antidote to
the something B that you were talking about earlier.
That would have been, no, actually due to chlorine gas.
It all circles
but
back.
Then
the circle of life.
The funding was cut off, and she was told her research was being set aside because work on the atomic bomb was taking precedence at the time.
So this does relate to Oppenheimer in some way, shape, or form.
So Claire committed suicide in 1949.
This is a deeply depressed family.
Depression
is genetic.
There probably was,
Depression is
some
genetic.
Some genetic issues there that went...
You can be more prone to be suicidal due to genetics. That is a thing.
But just...
People just leaving their...
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, it was a sad time.
It was. It absolutely was.
Especially for that family. But, wow.
Now, how this whole story kind of came to my attention to begin with was a fascinating book that I was listening to as an audiobook. I had heard about it. Another pilot had told me about it a couple of years ago, and I've been trying to find it and never could track it down. And I remembered it again after a while. I was like, oh yeah, that. And I looked for it again. I found it in a library app, borrowed it, was listening to the book, and chapter after chapter there was stuff in there that was just like, whoa, wow, I had no idea. That is interesting stuff about history. And this whole thing about guano and stuff was a little part of one chapter in there, and the whole thing about Fritz Haber.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, dude, seriously? And so I went back and did a bunch of research on my own, which is how I came to find the rest of the stuff.
Oh, we'll include some of the sources below.
This is the book, How to Hide an Empire, A History of the Greater United States, by Daniel Immerwahr.
I've heard that name before.
As in Clara Immerwahr?
I should know who that is.
Clara was Fritz Haber's wife.
So his brother?
No. But...
No, her brother, sorry. So his brother-in-law wrote this book?
No. Daniel, no. This is a dude that's like probably my age.
Oh, so a descendant of an in-law of...
Correct.
Haber.
So Clara's, I think it was like her nephew or something was this guy's grandfather or something.
Yeah, great grandkid or whatever.
It wasn't that long ago. We're talking...
Like 2 greats.
World War II. Anyway, so I was like, what an interesting tie-in to this whole thing.
But he wrote this story about his family.
Yeah, but that's not what the whole book is about. But he included, as part of this story of the greater United States and about kind of the colonial, not colonial, sort of the, about the empire
Mm-hmm.
of the United States, about territories and things that the United States has taken over, but they are not states, and how that has affected the history of the U.S., but also the history of the world. Really, really fascinating book. Highly recommended. But anyway, that's what piqued my curiosity about this whole story, and I dug into it. Whatever. So that's a little slice of history. It covered a bunch of stuff, and it wasn't roses and rainbows necessarily.
Well, if you are
interesting slice
reviewing
of
history and history is always roses and rainbows, then you are not reviewing true history, because humans are messy, and sometimes we do cool stuff, sometimes we do great stuff, but most of the time we do messy stuff and we hurt each other, which is sad. But sometimes we do cool stuff too.
Okay, so to end on an upbeat note, one of the things that Joelle and I do occasionally in minding the gap of difference stuff is we will share either a video or something that we've come across, or a meme or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this past week, the videos that we've shared and enjoyed together were of what?
Other than dogs?
Other than dogs. This week it was a little bit different.
African dancing?
Kids dancing in Africa.
Which is nothing new, but I'm so I love this for you, that you have discovered this, and that it makes you
It's not
so
just
happy.
a broad thing. Hey, there are kids in Africa that are dancing, but
like there are specified like content pages and like channels and content creators that specifically do this.
Yeah.
But you found a video that really spoke to you.
I did. I really enjoyed it. It was neat. I liked the song. The music itself was very similar to the kinds of rhythms and things that I grew up with in Haiti. And then the dance moves themselves were modern, but I don't know.
We'll throw up a clip so you can see.
It was interesting. I really liked it. It was good stuff. It was good stuff. And then you showed me something with a guy dancing with a whole bunch of little kids.
There was a guy who created a TikTok dance challenge to a song, and his choreography went viral. And then I guess he traveled to this village, and this is I think it's an orphanage or a school. I think it's an orphanage of kids, and a part of just something that they do is they post a lot of like TikTok challenges and dances online and stuff. But they really liked that dance, and so he just met up with them, and then they danced the dance together. Seeing someone else, especially a group of people, experience such visceral joy and happiness, and they're just living their best lives and doing their little dancey dance, it just brings me so much joy. And I'm like, I want that. Look at them go. Like, they're so happy and they're doing something they love, and it seems easy. They're not like, me when I usually dance where I'm like, step, step, step. They're just doing their thing, and it's effortless. And they seem to have so much fun, and I love that for them.
So wasn't that your experience with your kids last year? Just overflowing with joy, effervescing with the joy of life? Maybe not. One of these days, we'll talk about teaching.
One of these days, we'll talk about trauma with teaching. We did do some dancing on occasion. You saw some of said dancing when we did our show.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah.
To say that there was some weeping and gnashing of teeth is not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
There actually was weeping and gnashing of teeth on stage by people in the show. And this, we're not talking like kindergarten either.
I forgot about the traumatic flashbacks.
Anyway.
You know what I was trying to think of before we exit? I was trying to think of what I know about like our family genealogy and our family history. If we were to write a book like this, what's something one of our ancestors did that was like really, really cool? And the only thing I can think of, because the only thing I can think of is you have like an Amish ancestor lady
who invented the matchbox.
No, she just was like brave enough to leave her community. And she married a non-Amish dude and they just moved elsewhere. I think there is some kind of a story. Oh, wait, no. Mom is related to some soldiers who fought in the battle for like Texan independence. In like Abilene, Texas.
Oh, I don't remember hearing that story before.
Yeah. So we'll have to go into that when we do our genealogy or family history episode. Okay. And just pull up the 23andMe data or the Ancestry.com data. I don't know. But maybe one day we'll be able to write. I think that's so cool that he wrote a book like that and was able to tie some of his own ancestry into that. I think that's so cool.
Yep.
Maybe one day we can do that. We'll see.
Alrighty.
But yeah. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you very much. We'll see you guys next time.
What were we saying?
Nothing. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, don't forget to like and subscribe and follow all of the socials. Check the description box where I'll have like a link to like the book and to some of the sources that Dad talked about. And feel free to leave any comments if you got any suggestions for future episodes or just some feedback. But yeah, thanks for I'm not a big fan of the slice.
The slice of history?
But I think it's going to be a running joke. I think it's going to be a running joke.
A crumble of history?
I'm done. I'm done with you. All right, everyone. Bye.
See ya.
Please mind the gap.